Welcome everybody to a look at a brand new 4K release from StudioCanal, and it is 1995's Cutthroat Island. So this is an adventure swashbuckler clocking in at 125 minutes long, or 124 actually, sorry. And yeah, it had a budget of 92 to 98 million dollars, comfortably becoming one of the most expensive films of its time. But unfortunately, in the US alone, it only made $10 million. So, yeah, bit of a box office bomb. Directed by Rennie Harlin, though, who had much more success with the likes of Die Hard 2, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Cliffhanger, and The Long Kiss Goodnight. It also stars Gina Davis, who was in the likes of Beetlejuice, The Fly, Thelma and Louise, and also The Long Kiss Goodnight. Also stars alongside her Matthew Modine, who was in the likes of Oppenheimer, The Dark Knight Rises, Full Metal Jacket, Sicario, Day of the Soldado, and Married to the Mob. And finally, Frank Langella, who was in the likes of Small Soldiers, Unknown, Robot and Frank, as well as the 1979 version of Dracula. Unfortunately, not seen much of his older stuff, so definitely someone I'm going to be looking into at some point a little bit more. So this is about old Morgan Adams and her slave, William Shaw, who are on a quest to recover the 3 portions of a treasure map. Unfortunately, the final portion is held by her murderous uncle, Dog. Her crew is skeptical of her leadership abilities, so she must complete a quest before they mutiny against her. This is made yet more difficult by the efforts of the British Crown to end her pirate raids. So this was known primarily for being a huge financial flop, which meant when I originally watched this, I came into it expecting a complete disaster on the basis of its lackluster box office performance. And while it is far from great, it certainly never deserved to fail as badly as it did. There are far worse films from the 90s, for instance, that did massively successful in terms massively successful in terms of the business that they generated. But yeah, still Gina Davis is great and one of the few action heroines from the 90s in terms of Western films. Obviously, Hong Kong had plenty of action heroines from that period and the 80s, in fact. But yeah, Western films generally did not have any female action roles, and if they did, there were a supporting action role, like Michelle Yeoh in Tomorrow Never Dies, or who actually is the only one I can immediately think of in terms of Western films. So yeah, unfortunately, that is not something that was a common occurrence, and I feel that's one reason why this flopped at the box office. But yeah, the action is also itself really rather stellar. The production, for the most part, is faultless, which it should be for a film of this level of budget. And yeah, and for the most part, despite the somewhat routine plot, it is predominantly entertaining and engrossing in equal measure. The standout for me, however, is the score, which is really well done and makes all the long shots of stunning scenery and action all the better. It's easily one of my favourite scores from the 90s and certainly one of my favourite action scores. As yeah, John Debney does a fantastic job with it, and yeah, I definitely found myself also enjoying this film upon a rewatch with this 4K release. As yeah, the 4K restoration has done wonders to improve the look of the film, as well as the sound when it comes to both the score and the highly entertaining action scenes. So yeah, the only big flaw with this for me really is big flaw. The two big flaws for me with this are the script, which is quite basic. It does have some good humorous moments to it, but there's not much in the way of characterization. And the plot, which is really rather quite basic as well. It's just at the end of the day, a treasure hunting film, which could the more could be done with that kind of plot synopsis, to be honest. And yeah, at the end of the day, it just feels like a reason to have action scenes all over the place, and then have that plot element stringing those action scenes together. But the action scenes are great, and yeah, it at least means that it's an entertaining film because the plot and the script take a bit of a back seat, and yeah, you just have the spectacle on show. So yeah, this is a really really nice steelbook. The title is embossed, as I hope you can see, which is really nicely done. And yeah, I like the poster artwork as well, which is excellent. And then you get typical pirate symbol on the back with X marks the spot for the treasure. And then yeah, you get this on Blu-ray and 4K, which again, both printed discs. So this is the Blu-ray and there's the 4K. And yeah, you get a few extras on the discs. It's on the 4K and the Blu-ray disc as well that we've never had before. I think this has only had a DVD release before this, maybe a VHS at some point, but yeah, definitely only a DVD at most in terms of UK releases. Never had a Blu-ray over here before now. So on the 4K disc, it's got a commentary from director Rennie Harlin. And then on the Blu-ray disc, you've got 5 new extras. You've got The Adventure of a Lifetime, Making Cutthroat Island. You've got Charting the Course, Creating Cutthroat Island. Across the Bow, Editing Cutthroat Island. Summon Your Courage, Scoring Cutthroat Island. I'm particularly interested in that, given how much I enjoy the score. And then you got SE Pirate, a short film by Matthew Modine himself. And extras that we've had before, I imagine, on DVD are commentary from director Rennie Harlan, so I imagine that's the same commentary that is on the 4K disc, as well as a making of, behind the scenes, storyboards, interviews, and the original trailer. So, yeah, I can see why this sunk the studio that made it. I think it was they're called Coralco or something like that. Yeah, they've long been bought out, I imagine, by a bigger studio. So yeah, that sunk the studio, which is a big shame because they were the production company behind stuff like Total Recall, Basic Instinct, a whole host of really, really good films. But yeah, because they weren't the theatrical distributor, they didn't really get much of the money back from those huge hits. Because, you know, at the end of the day, Total Recall and Basic Instinct alone made a good few hundred million between them. So you'd think a film even of this size failing wouldn't have much of an impact, but I imagine they had a large part of their, you know, finances involved in the production of this. And yeah, at the end of the day, a $98 million production budget is a huge budget. You put it into the context of, say, Jurassic Park from a couple of years prior, that was less than 70 million. Independence Day from around the same period was about 75 million. And yet this, yeah, despite not being, you know, having any CGI in it, or, you know, being a sci-fi film or anything like that, had a far bigger budget and yet made nowhere near any of the money that those two films made. So yeah, massive flop. Apparently it cost them about 147 million in losses, which is, yeah, more than enough to sink most studios, I imagine, especially back in the 90s. But yeah, I'm glad it still finally got a physical release and a nice steelbook release at that as well. And yeah, it looks fantastic on 4K. And yeah, as a fan of this film, even though I don't give it the highest of ratings, I've only given it 3.5 out of 5. It's still something that is well worth the watch. So yeah, get out there and see it if you haven't already. But if you have seen the film before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I imagine some people aren't quite as kind to it as I am. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.